What's up, guys? Decorating holiday sugar cookies is one of the most fun and creative things that we get to do this time of year as bakers. So I hope you got a chance to check out my previous video where I showed you how to make my favorite rollout sugar cookies. And now I'm going to share with you a couple of my favorite techniques to decorate sugar cookies. And I promise you it's not going to involve a pastry bag filled with royal icing. So let's get started. So the first technique that I'm going to show you guys is actually watercolor painted buttercream. So this cookie is actually covered with buttercream, it's chilled, and then we can paint it with a mixture of food dye and food grade alcohol. So all you need for this technique is some food grade alcohol, some food dye, a round sugar cookie, and some smooth buttercream. I have a large open tip at the top. I'm going to take one of my circle cookies and I just want to pipe a mound, probably about 1 tablespoon total, of icing right in the center of the cookie. And then to get this flat top on this cookie that's perfect for watercolor, I have a piece of poster board covered with some parchment paper, and I'm just going to turn the cookie upside down and press the cookie straight down, give it a little wiggle, just until from the underside I see that the icing is starting to come to the edge of the cookie. So now I'm just going to pop this cookie in the fridge. I need that buttercream to harden up so that I can peel the cookie off the parchment, and then we'll be able to paint it with a watercolor effect. So it may take about an hour for the buttercream on top of your cookie to harden up, but you want the buttercream to be completely hard before you try and take it off the board. So I like to lift up the parchment paper, lift the cookie backwards, and then just peel the parchment off. And you'll have a perfectly flat, nicely rounded disc of buttercream on top of your cookie that's ready to paint, decorate, do whatever you want with it. So I would advise just working on these buttercream cookies one at a time and leaving the rest in the fridge so that the buttercream stays nice and solid for when you're painting on it. So I've mixed just a drop or two of alcohol into some purple food dye here. I like this painting mixture to be a bit thicker than it was in the watercolor technique when we painted on our snowflake. So I'm just going to write peace on top of my cookie here. You could also use this watercolor on top of cold buttercream technique with a stencil. So if you have a little food stencil that you like, you could do that. So my second favorite way to decorate a sugar cookie is to just make use of the very same cutter that I used to cut out the sugar cookie. So if we roll out some marshmallow fondant, and I like using marshmallow fondant because it's so yummy, we can use the same cutter and it'll take all the guesswork out of transferring a design straight on top of our cookie. So for my polar bear and my snowflake, I've rolled out a piece of white marshmallow fondant till it's about 1/16 of an inch thick. And I'm just going to take the cookie cutter, the same cutter that I used to cut out my sugar cookie dough, and press it down with nice firm pressure. And then to make sure I have a nice clean edge, I'm just going to run my finger over the edge of the cutter. That's always a nice tip whenever you're cutting fondant out with a cutter. And then to get my fondant to stick to my sugar cookie, I'm just using some corn syrup. And then just lining up the edges of this snowflake, I'll just press this into place. So to smooth the fondant onto the cookie, I like to take a little ball of fondant, the same color, just give it a knead so it's nice and soft. And then you can use this fondant and just kind of buff over the cutout. So once you have your cookie covered in fondant, one really great way to finish the cookie up that takes very little effort is with a watercolor effect. So you're going to need some food dye, you're going to need some food safe paint brushes, and then you're going to need either some water or some food grade alcohol. I would recommend using alcohol. You could also use lemon extract if you like. So I'm just going to moisten the top of the fondant with some vodka. That's what I'm using here. And then I have another paintbrush, and I've mixed some vodka and some teal together. I'm just going to brush this alcohol food dye mixture right over the cookie. Just a very organic look. A nice hazy blue snowflake. There we go. So once this dries, it'll be ready to go. So let's finish up our polar bear. So I have just a little teardrop shaped piece of fondant, and I'll just stick that right where his ear is. Really defines what's going on. And then I'll just take a modeling tool and just indent in where his mouth is. This polar bear is probably a happy guy hanging out in the Arctic, being all sweet and sugary, so he's got a smile on his face. I'm also taking a food marker, and I'll use that to mark where his eye would be, and also where his nose is. So it's really easy to add even more dimension to your cookie by dusting just the edge of the fondant with some petal dust. If you're looking for petal dust, it's readily available at most any craft store in the cake decorating section. So I have a really light blue petal dust. I'll just barely load the brush up. And then I'm just going to lightly dry brush just around the outside of this guy. And finally, I think that all polar bears need scarves. So I've rolled out some red fondant, same thickness, about 1/16 of an inch. And I'll start by just cutting a thin piece of fondant. And this is going to be the main piece that wraps around his neck. So I'll use my cutter to cut the edges clean exactly where the scarf would end the polar bear's neck. And then just using a touch of that same corn syrup I used to stick the fondant to the cookie, just press that into place. And I want nice, long, flowing pieces for the back edge of this scarf. So I'll start with my longest piece, place this on top. And these polar bear cookies are ready to go. If you can use a cookie cutter and you can roll out fondant, you can make this cookie. So I hope you guys enjoyed seeing the creative ways that you can think outside the box and decorate your holiday sugar cookies. I would love to see what you guys come up with, so if you make these cookies, share them on my Facebook page at Baked by Dan. Don't forget to subscribe to Baking with Dan on YouTube, and as usual, if you have any questions, let me know. Happy holiday cookie decorating, and until next time, guys, stay sweet.